So let's use that momentum we gained in our last section to discuss how we now add an auto update back into our Dash application. So with this, I kept everything basically the same, except we're going to add in one additional component, which we will call our Dash core dot interval property, where we will add an interval component to this application, which actually is a counter that helps with automatic updating. So where in this previous example we utilized an input button, which we left on the graphic. The input button's not going to do anything in this sample. So if you're in your Dash auto callback notebook, I apologize if I didn't say that at the beginning. Please open that Dash auto callback notebook in the course content section. We're going to focus and key in on this interval component that we're adding. So you'll have the same components, only differences is here, and then what we're going to do in the callback. So we're going to even keep our toast so that we can watch and make sure that this is updating. So again, very similar. This should feel the same. The only difference is we are changing the input from the button to our IC1, which is our interval component 1, and the input is going to be in intervals, in underscore intervals. So whereas our button was in underscore clicks, our in underscore intervals is going to be set to 0, and this, anytime this fires, it is going to activate this callback. So when we define an interval, we want it to first tell what the ID is. Obviously, we do not want it disabled. You can disable these. You can even write the property to disable it if you have some kind of callback that you want to stop after so many times. But this interval is going to be the most important piece. So the interval is going to define in milliseconds how often you would like the Dash application to automatically update. And what you would like to automatically update is defined by the function you create within the callback. So for this example, we're going to choose 15 seconds. So because this is written in milliseconds, it's 1,000, obviously 1,000 seconds equals 1 second. So we're going to multiply that by 15 so that we can update our dashboard every 15 seconds. So again, I'm not gonna jump into the full explanation of this because we did that really in depth in our last section, but we're going to swap out our input for our IC1 in intervals property. So again, in order, we want to update our data tables data, our close figure, our metrics figure, our toast children, and our toast is open property. We want our input to be the interval component 1, and we want it to be the in intervals property that fires our callback. And then we also, again, want our input to come from the symbol itself. So that symbol field, that input that we defined in our last section, this will be our input, and we will grab the value to utilize as that ticker symbol that we would like to update. So here we're going to define this as our interval 1, where this was our click from the last one. Our first one is going to be interval 1, and then our symbol. We're going to again look for the change ID that fired the callback. In this instance, again, the only thing that can is IC1, except for when we first run it, which is why we put this prevent update in for when it first runs, or for some unknown reason something else fires this callback. If it's not IC1 that did it, we want the prevent update to stop anything from updating. Much like our last example, we're going to reassign by analysis by looking at our momentum strategy from our momentum strategy notebook. Oops, sorry about that. We're going to pass it the symbol from our input. We're going to recalculate the close figure and metrics figure, or I guess rebuild the close figure and metrics figure based upon our new ticker data. We're going to convert the by analysis to the correct form so that it can update the data object of our analysis table. And then we're going to assign our toast text and our toast open property. And then again, and very importantly, in order, we're going to tell each of these outputs what they need to be. So in order, we're going to assign our analysis table to our converted by analysis, close figure to our close, metrics figure to our metrics figure, toast text to our text of dash update completed, and then our is open property will be set to true once this once this happens. So again, the difference here is what we allow the input to be. So the input before was a button, and now we want it to be an interval component. So let's go ahead and start our application. In our application, we're going to let it load up fully here with each of our figures. All right, so everything is there. Let's go ahead and type in a new property. You can see after about 15 seconds we are getting our update, and we did get the change in our data, in our metrics. And you could add a counter to this if you want to see every time that 15 seconds is about to happen. But for this, to keep it simple, we just wanted to add some basic components. You can look at the time here in your tray, so that you can see that 15 seconds and really get a feel for when it's about to happen. But if you want to try again, we'll go ahead and make this Baba for this example. And now on our next update, we should see that information populate. All right, so now we've switched. We've hit our 15 seconds, and Baba is now our stock of choice. And then lastly, to wrap up for this section, we'll go ahead and change it back to Apple, just so you can see that value update again to something you're more familiar with, because we've utilized it a lot during this course. So we get our entry points, we get our graphics, and we get our metrics that define our entries. Okay, to wrap for this section, it is very, very important to understand these callbacks, because these can be very frustrating when you're trying to write something that will call back and update these applications. Some of the error handling that will appear down here, if there is an issue, it can be pretty non-descriptive and not really pointing you to the right problem. So the important thing to always note is making sure you've got the right ID, the right object that you want to update, the order, defining your order of your inputs and states for the function call, and then defining your output in the correct order and the correct format needed to update each of these. So for the data, this is why we converted it to a dictionary and wrote it as records, so that we can get by analysis in the correct format needed to update the data for our data table, our analysis table. So just pay very close attention to this. This is a tricky item, and we want to make sure you get that before you move on to the next section. So play around with this, copy, make yourself a new notebook, make sure that you understand these callbacks, change components, add a second interval component if you want, add a second button, add a button plus an interval component, do whatever it takes to make sure that you're familiar with these callbacks, how you call them, and then how you update the graphics. Again, this can be one of the trickiest items, so take your time. This section is very important. Focus on these callbacks, and then once you're done with that, and once you're comfortable, come back and we're going to review creating a base application, which we'll use in our final section of how we bring it all together, where we will actually start to analyze multiple stocks and interact with our broker in that same Dash application.